College of Education, Dr. Amelia Tibuan, the Dean of MSU Marawi Campus, Dr. Montia Jamila D. Sarip, the Dean of the Christ the King College, Dr. Laidi D. Pidaranga, the Faculty of MSU Marawi Main Campus, Christ the King College of Maranding, and MSU-IIT, welcome to our Day 2 webinar on training of peer mentors for Inflex Modality, hosted by the Department of Technology Teacher Education, College of Education, MSU-IIT. I am your MC for this morning. I am Mr. Glay Vincent C. Sumailo, a faculty from the Department of Technology Teacher Education. And allow me to have the recap on what was the program last Monday during our webinar on Inflex Modality. The welcome message was given by the deans of the colleges from the MSU Marawi, Christ the King College, and said MSU-IIT. It was followed by the first presentation on OBE syllabus for Inflex Modality, which was given by the faculty of said DPRE, Professor J. Roel B. Similia. And after that, it was the showcasing of output in the alignment to the syllabus, which was facilitated by Professor Vanessa B. Zabala, Professor Rica May Guarin, and Dr. Luel Lucero. After the lunch break, the presentation 2 followed, entitled OBE Syllabus of Constructive Alignment, Fostering Student-Centered Teaching Learning Activities and Teaching Assessment, which was given by Professor or Dr. Roxanne A. Consolacion. Then the workshop on asynchronous and synchronous activities showcasing of output on the alignment to the syllabus, which was facilitated again by Professor Vanessa B. Zabala, Professor Rica May Guarin, and Dr. Luel Lucero. And allow me to have the overview of today's activity. So overview of today's activity. So day 1 is the OBE syllabus. The activities was developing culmination outcomes, constructive alignments of TLAs and TAs, and the output is about the OBE syllabus. The day 2, which is today, keeping students engaged and motivated. The activities includes developing learning environment using Google Classroom, creating lecture videos and other learning resources using PowerPoint and Google applications. And the output number 2 is the Google Classroom and the learning guide. The day 3 is keeping students engaged and motivated. Activities include developing learning environment using Google Classroom, creating lecture videos and other learning resources using PowerPoint and Google application. And the output, PowerPoint lecture with narration and producing lecture videos using Camtasia. The day 4 includes maintaining integrity of assessment, and the activities are creating assessment plan, asynchronous and synchronous assessment, create an online assessment, quiz and rubric using Google Form, and the outputs are assessment plan, rubric or online quiz using Google Forms, and assignment. To formally start this webinar, let me give to you the sequence in today's program. After my part is a presentation entitled Keeping Students Engaged and Motivated, which will be given by Dr. Hanna Teras, a faculty from the Tampere University, Finland. After Dr. Hanna's lesson on, we will then have the 10 minutes health break. After the break, a presentation for learning guide for Inflex implementation will follow, which will be given by Professor Junel B. Medina, a faculty from the said Department of Science and Technology at the Science and Mathematics Education. After the presentation, we will have our lunch break. In the afternoon session, the presentation on development of an online learning environment using Google Workspace for teaching and learning will be given by Dr. Ria Borromeo, a faculty from UPOU or the University of the Philippines Open University. In the middle of the presentation, we'll have a health break for 10 minutes. And after that, Dr. Ria will continue his topic on the Google Classroom. Then after that, the closing part will follow. The program will begin as follows, and I am Glay Vincent C. Sumailo, a faculty from the Department of Technology Teacher Education, your MC for today. Let us proceed now for the presentation by Dr. Hanna Teras.
Well, the topic for today is improving learner engagement. And now you should be seeing my next slide.
Yes, Dr.
Yep.
Hannah, we're seeing the next slide. Yes.
Good. So this is working. Fantastic. So student engagement is always an important question, but it's even more so in online and blended and hybrid and flexible delivery type. And this because many students, we know how classroom teaching works. People know what to do. They come to the classroom or come to the auditorium, they listen to the lecture, or they participate in the seminar, they participate in the discussion. The teacher knows the students and the teacher sees everybody's faces. And it's something that we are more used to. And it's easier for us as teachers and tutors to sort of have an idea of how the students are doing when we can see them. And also for the students, it might be easier. However, even in a classroom mode, we worry about student engagement, because even if they come to the classroom, sometimes they're not paying attention, or we don't know as teachers if they are really following what we are saying, or if they're really learning what we are hoping to teach. And we know that learner engagement is so important because there is a lot of research showing that learner engagement is a crucial factor in student performance and also in student satisfaction. So a student who is engaged is learning better and is more happy about their learning. This can be disrupted in distance learning because it's more lonely. And we know from experience that student dropout rates can be high in distance learning. And even if the student doesn't drop out completely, it might be more difficult to foster student engagement. And before we go deeper into this subject, I want to include a dictionary definition of what it means to engage. And now I'm excluding the meaning engage to get married, because this is not what we are talking about in this lecture. We're talking about different type of engagement, which could be defined in the following ways. So if someone is engaged, they're induced to participate in something. Engaging means that the attention of the person is focused on the thing. It means to attract and hold by influence. It means to provide occupation for, to provide something to do. To be engaged means that you are dealing with something, especially at length, not just for a short while, but if you're really engaged in a project or engaged in learning, you're dealing with it at length for a longer period of time. And to be engaged means being able to begin and carry on an activity. So these are all things that we hope our students would be doing. We hope that they will be participating. We hope that they are attentive. We hope that their attention is attracted and held in the studies. We hope that they are occupied with the studies, that they are putting time and effort into it. We hope that they're there for a long haul and not just coming to the class and then going away and forgetting everything. And we hope that they are able to begin and carry on with learning activities. So this is what we mean by learner engagement. We hope to teach in such a way and organize our courses and modules in such a way that students will be doing all these things. So let's keep this definition in mind as we go on. Now, the critical question, of course, is how do we achieve this? What are the factors that will cause students to be engaged or not be engaged in their studies. Now, there are three ways of thinking about teaching. And these three levels are defined by John Biggs. At the end of this presentation, I have references and resources where you can access the work of John Biggs. Also online, there's a link if you want to read more. But this is already quite an old theory, or he has been working with this for a long time, but I think it's still very relevant, and it's also relevant in online and distance education. So he defines three levels of thinking about teaching. And as teachers, we can identify with one of these levels, and we can recognize that there around us, other students and teachers think about teaching in these three ways. And we start with the first level, and this level is the belief that it's all about what the students are like. And we all know that sometimes as teachers we think, okay, that's one of our good students, and this is one of our bad students. This is a good student because this student is studying and always submitting everything in time and is making a cognitive effort. And this student is a bad student because they're not doing the same thing. Now, this is also called the blame the students model. and this is a very simplistic way of thinking about teaching and thinking about students. In this thinking, we as teachers are tempted to think that it's just, there's nothing we can do about this. Some students are good and some are not. So the good students will excel in their studies and the bad students will not. But if this is the level of thinking that we have, then we don't really have much to do about it. We only believe that there are two types of students, good and bad. So the good students take notes and they ask questions and they employ higher order thinking skills. They don't just try to memorize everything and try to pass the test, but they are really interested in the topic. They really want to learn. They take extra time. They invest effort. Their assignments are good because they put a lot of time and thought into them. Whereas we think that the bad students are lazy. They are not interested. They're not making an effort. They are just trying to pass the test, and they're not really interested in the topic. Does this sound familiar to any one of you? I know I have been thinking like this. Oh, what's wrong with this student? Why is this student not doing anything? So this is level one. What the students are like. Level two is what the teachers are like. So this is this level focuses on the teacher rather than the student. In this way of thinking, which is also could be called blame the teacher model, we think that a teacher is either good or bad, and that it's all about the teacher. If the teacher is entertaining enough, if the teacher is using all kinds of tips and tricks and using the good teaching methods, then the students will be engaged. And a bad teacher is not doing any of this. Of course, there is some truth to this, as there is some truth to the first level as well. But this is not the whole truth, because if we think this way, and you see a lot of this kind of thinking around these days, and especially when we think about teaching with technology. sometimes we are tempted to think that if we use all the latest technology, we are good teachers and the students will be engaged. And if you Google, I did this, if you Google student engagement, most of the things that you get in your Google search will be companies offering this technology and that technology and this gadget and this approach to motivate students. And we think if we give them a game, they will be motivated. If there is, if we give them virtual reality, they will be motivated. And I myself, I have done some research also, as we heard in the introduction, with using emerging technologies for teaching. And the problem with a lot of research concerning emerging technologies for teaching is that they seldom go beyond motivation. I think the students will be motivated by this new game, therefore it will be engaging. Or the students will be motivated if we give them badges, or if we use if we use this type of video, or if we use this or that technology. You see, the problem with this kind of thinking is that the focus shifts from the subject that we're teaching and the topic, like the substance, towards the technology. So if technology starts leading the way, then there is the danger that the students, yes, they might be very entertained and they might have a lot of fun. It might still be that they are not learning what they are supposed to be learning. They're only interested in playing the game, or they're only interested because there is a gadget. Here, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing to use technology in teaching. No, but I think technology should be used for pedagogical purpose and not for the sake of novelty, or for the sake of entertainment, or for the sake of just trying to like motivate the student, because we might be directing the motivation into a wrong direction for the students. So these are quite common, these two. Either the students are good or bad, or the teachers are good or bad. But both of these are very simplistic ways of thinking. John Biggs claims that good learning is not the result of what the students are like. It's not the result of what the teachers are like, but primarily it's about what the students are doing. And let me explain a little bit what I mean by this. Now, learning takes place through the actions of the student. The teacher, of course, helps in this, but it's no matter how much the teacher is teaching, if the student is not doing anything, the learning is not taking place. So the student has to be engaged in the learning process somehow. So what does the student do? And how do we get the student activity to match our intention as teachers? You see, sometimes as teachers, we have the intention that the student will be, like after this course, the students will be able to analyze this and this, or they will be able to use these and these skills to perform these and these tasks. But it could be that the students are not acting that way. They might be only interested in passing the test and getting on with their studies. And the key to help student activity match teacher intention is pedagogical design or learning design or constructive alignment. There's different names. I'm going to talk about pedagogy because it's an umbrella term that these other terms will honor it. What this means is that it's very important for us as teachers to design our teaching and design our course or module in such a way that the goals, the learning goals, the assessment tasks, and all the materials and resources and strategies that we are using are aligned. This means you've sometimes heard maybe the claim that what you assess is what you get. And to an extent, this is true. So we need to start thinking from the end. And by this, I mean that we don't only think about all the content that we want to deliver, but we think, what do we really want the student to know and be able to do after these studies? And then we take the end, the goal, and design everything else to contribute towards that goal. And this means if our assessment tasks are not assessing the right thing, then we are not getting what our teaching goal was. Or if our materials, our resources, the texts that we give to the students or the videos that we give to the students or our own lectures that we give, if all that is not contributing towards the goals and the assessment, if these are not aligned, then it could be that the student is doing something else, is doing something different from what we were hoping for them to do. And I will explain this in more detail a little bit later on, but I think you get the idea. So my claim is that engagement is primarily a question of learning design. So the teacher has an intention. Teacher has an idea of what the students should learn, what they should be able to demonstrate upon completing the course. So this is we have this idea in our head. This is why we have this course. This is what the students will be able to do and demonstrate afterwards. Then we have student actions. And as we remember, student actions define what they learn. And students' actions are often very much directed by assessment and what is required to pass the course. The students are economical. They very often they have a lot to do, and they don't necessarily do extra. They do what is required to pass the course. So we as teachers, we need to align it in such a way that we require such things that that will lead to the students learning the right thing. Now, the question in the middle is about learning design. We need to ask ourselves if our learning tasks that we have designed for the students and if our assessment tasks direct the students' actions towards our intention or not. And we also need to consider if all the materials, all the lectures, all the readings, all the videos, all the activities, everything that we have planned for the student, if these resources support in achieving these goals. And learning design is one of my main research areas. And as we heard in the introduction, I have done lots of research in authentic learning designs. I will have another lecture coming up where I talk in more depth about what authentic learning is and how you can use the authentic learning principles in your own course. But there are also other ways of achieving a learning design that directs students' actions towards teacher intentions. Now, one of the problems that we often have, especially in online learning, is that, well, I can only speak about the context that I'm familiar with. So I know that at least in Finnish universities and in Australian universities, because I've worked in those, one of the most common problem that teachers have when they are when they're designing an online or blended course is that they are not really using learning design at all, but they use the LMS as content repository, where they just put a lot of PDF files, a lot of links to materials, and a lot of content. And then at the end of the course, there is an exam, or there is a report, or there is an essay, or whatever. And the problem here is that there is a lot of stuff for the student and one output at the end, but nothing really to direct students' actions while the course is still going on. And this is where learning design comes into play. Now, I would like to share with you some findings that we had with our learning analytics project. We conducted focus group interviews and workshops with university students because we wanted to find out what are the major needs of the students and what are the biggest hindrances that they face, like what are the obstacles and problems that they face in their learning. And the findings are quite interesting, and now I'm sharing those with you. And these findings support what I said earlier about learning engagement being more about learning design than about gadgets or novel technologies or anything like that. This is what came up from the student interviews, and we had almost 150 students participate in these interviews in 7 different universities. So it's quite a big set of qualitative data, and these are the main findings that we had. So the students are hoping for clear aims and objectives so that they know when they begin the course, they will know very soon what is required of them What are they supposed to learn? What is the objective of this course? They also hope for relevant and engaging learning tasks. And we're going to talk more about learning tasks and in my next lecture. So we dwell deeper into the topic of learning tasks then. But the students hope for the learning tasks to be relevant. And by relevant, they mean that these learning tasks should make sense. Like, why are we doing this task? And what is this task helping me learn? So it's about alignment, so that the task, it will be clear for the student that this task will help me reach the objectives of this course, because I know what the objectives of this course are. And I don't know if you have this problem, but we have in our universities, all too often students don't really know what the objectives of the course is. They know what the content of the course is, but they don't know what am I supposed to know and be able to do after I've taken this course. Moreover, the students hope for the learning materials and resources to be clear and accessible. And accessible means a lot of things. It means that it's something that they can, that is not, that the difficulty level is right. It's not too easy, not too difficult. Also, in the context of a learning management system and an online or blended learning, they should find the learning materials easily, so that they don't need to navigate through heaps and heaps of stuff, not knowing which ones of these are the most important ones and which ones of these are the core readings or materials for this course. The students also hope for interaction with teacher and peers, feedback, not only at the end of the course, but also along the way. They hope to be able to evaluate their progress and whether they are proceeding to the right direction, if they're learning the right thing. The usability of the learning management system is really important, and so is availability of support. And students often struggle with time management and study skills. And I think all of us sometimes struggle with time management. We have so much to do. As you can see, these are very basic things. This is not rocket science. These are the things that students themselves say, if these are in place, then it's easier for us to be engaged in learning. It's when we think about ourselves as teachers and as academics, as university employees, we know that if we are given a very ambiguous task, it's harder to begin. You don't know what to do. And if you need to put a lot of cognitive effort into just figuring out, what do I even need to do here? You are already exhausted before you even started doing anything. You're only just spending all this time figuring out what is required of me. What do I need to do? So this is also true with students. And in the classroom, students can raise their hand and they can say, oh, excuse me, I have a question. Did this mean blah, 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 blah? But if we are using an online learning environment, the student doesn't have this option. Of course, they can write in the discussion forum, but it will probably take a longer time for them to get the answer, and then they wait again, and then maybe the answer comes, but the student doesn't log into the LMS until 2 days later, and then maybe they see the answer, and you can see this is taking too long. Already lost momentum. So this is why, especially in online and blended learning, we need to pay extra careful attention to the clarity, to the usability, and to the design of the learning process. This doesn't sound exciting, but our research shows that it's actually a crucial step in achieving better learning engagement. And here I summarize how we all can improve student engagement with very small steps, something that all the teachers can do. We can, I don't know, we are using the Moodle learning management system. I don't know which one you are using. Are you also using Moodle? Or something else?
Yes, Dr. Hannah,
Yeah.
we're using Moodle.
You also use Moodle?
Yes.
Yes, so this is very, very good, because then you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is very good, because you know in Moodle, when you design a new Moodle course, you can choose between different layouts. You can organize your content in different ways. You can use a weekly organization, or by topics, or whatever suits the occasion. I myself like to use the weekly mode, because it makes it very easy for the students to look at the glance. This is what I need to do this week. Of course, sometimes it's not the best, because sometimes your course is not proceeding in a weekly mode, but sometimes it's more like bigger topics or a project that the students are working with, or something like that. But often in blended mode, the weekly or bi-weekly will be good, because normally it proceeds in a linear way, and there is maybe a new topic every week, or a new step every week. So this is very accessible for the student if it's organized in this way. This may sound like really, really, really basic things, but you would be surprised to know how many distinguished academics and really good face-to-face teachers struggle with organizing their LMS content in such a way that it's easy for the student to navigate. Another thing that our students mentioned in these interviews was the clarity of instructions. It should be easy to find, materials, and assessments. So it's important when we start a course. The first impression and first glance is really important, because you know how sometimes it's difficult to start something, but once you've started, it's easier to continue. Even in something as basic as cleaning the house, or whatever task that you need to perform, something at work. Sometimes it's more difficult to begin than carry on with something that you already begun. So we need to pay a lot of attention in our course beginnings, so that it will be easy for the students to begin studies, because if the beginning goes well, then it's easier for them to continue, to carry on, to stay engaged. And what is important at the beginning, it's important that the students will find, these are the instructions, these are the goals, this is what I need to do. These will be the assessments. In the assessment, I will be required to be able to do this and this and this. And if the student gets this big picture in their head at the beginning, it's easier for them to begin. Another thing is sequencing of learning activities. It's, you know how sometimes you have to learn things in the right order, sometimes not. Sometimes it's okay if it's a big topic and the student has to investigate, but it's good to think about the sequencing of our learning activities. Also, so that there is always something for the student to do. I already said that I like the weekly mode because I like to give something for the students to do so that they can build their knowledge, always on top of what they already did. Next week, they will be able to build on what they did this week. And in my next lecture, I'm going to talk about authentic tasks. And in authentic tasks, it's also, even though they are bigger tasks like project type, big and not simple and small, but rather complicated and big. But even complicated and big tasks have steps. So we can build in our learning design, we can build milestones for the students so that they have a path to follow, so that they don't get overwhelmed. And also another thing that is good with the sequencing of learning activities is that sometimes students have the tendency, I know this because I am one of those students, so I know this from experience. Some students have the tendency of leaving everything at the last moment. And oftentimes it will be too much for them to acquire, to accomplish at the last moment. So we are helping students in their time management. Remember in the previous slide, the students said that time management is an issue. So we help students with time management when we sequence our learning activities for them. This doesn't mean that we make a very linear path, like do this and this and this, and everybody has to do exactly the same on exactly the same time. But if we build in milestones and give students learning activities along the way, it will help them manage the workload also. And it will also improve the clarity of the LMS design. So this is why I also like to use checkpoints. And by checkpoints, I mean that I like to build in points that help the students also to evaluate whether they are on the right track or not. This can be a form of self-assessment or peer assessment or a discussion with peers, or it can be a milestone of the project, or it can be a point along the way where they get feedback, something like that. Because one of the biggest problems that we've come across is that students don't necessarily know during the course if they are learning the right thing, if they're doing the right thing, if they're doing enough. They only know after the exam whether they pass the exam or not, if they get a good mark or a bad mark. This was something that our students in our interviews, they pointed out that too often it's like this. And if we think about this also from the teacher perspective, we also would probably like to know already, when the course is still going on, how our students are doing and if they are doing the right thing. So that's another reason for building in some checkpoints. And Moodle has a lot of tools for this. Depending on your topic that you are teaching, you can maybe build in a quiz or Moodle has this tool that is called a test, but it doesn't have to be formal assessment. It can be or a summative assessment. It can be a form of formative assessment and just getting feedback to yourself. So there's all these tools that we can use to build in self-assessment points for the students. Or if the students are working on a bigger project, for example, in teams, we can, and they are working on it for, let's say, 2 months or 1 month. What we can do, we can build in a checkpoint in the LMS that maybe towards like halfway of the project, they need to share their findings so far on a discussion forum, and another group will also share theirs, and then they can give feedback to each other. So there's all these types of things that we can build in to keep students working and to help them manage their time, to give them opportunities to get feedback, to share, articulate, and sequence their learning. This is a screen capture from a Moodle course. This is a theology course. This is why it has pictures of Bibles. This is a course that my father actually teaches. So I had access to this course and his permission to share this picture. Sorry, it's in Finnish, but it's the point here is I wanted to show that the layout is very clear and very simple. So viikko 1 and 2 means week 1 and 2, and then it says the theme, the topic of that week. Then we have the lecture of the week, the reading of the week, and a learning activity for that week. So this is very simple. And I know that sometimes we have more material, we have more stuff, but we can still organize all that in a very simple way, so that the students will see at a glance, this is what I need to do on week 1. This is what I need to do on week 2. So this is just an example. So my main claim for this lecture is that learning engagement starts with learning design. And here I have 2 examples of very useful learning design models that we can all use for designing our courses. One of them is called the ABC model, and it has been designed by Professor Diana Lorillard. And the other one is authentic e-learning, which has been developed by Professor Jan Harrington from Australia. And of course, there are more. I'm showing these two because I've used these and I like them. Also, they are you can mix and match and use them together. And in this lecture, I'm going to say a couple of things about the ABC model, not about authentic e-learning, because that's the topic for next week. What I find really helpful in the ABC model is the division into different types of learning. So according to this model, there's 6 types of learning, and they are acquisition, which is what the learners are doing when they are listening to a lecture, or they're listening to a video or podcast, or they're reading a book, or they're reading an article or website, or watching a video, or this is acquisition of content. And it's an important type of learning, but it's not the only type of learning. The second type on the yellow box is collaborative learning. So this is learning through collaboration, which could be discussion or practice or production in a group. And it's not only about content, but it's about taking part in the process and building knowledge collaboratively with other students. And we sometimes tend to think that we can't really do collaborative learning in an online or blended learning, and respond to questions with the teacher and with the peers. So this is like dialogue learning. And this also we can do in an online environment as well. The red box is learning by investigation. And this guides the learner to explore, to compare, and critique the texts and other resources that they have, and reflect on the concepts and ideas. Often this would also mean that the students will have to find more resources, not just the ones that we as teachers give them, but they would have to look at different sources, combine ideas, and reflect. Then we have practice in the purple box. Practice will enable the learner to adapt their actions to the task, to the goal, and improve their action. So this is practice is when students will operate with the knowledge and skills that they are learning. So they put it into practice. And finally, the green one says production. So this is very closely related to authentic tasks that I'm going to talk about next week. But here the idea is that the learning happens through producing something. The learner consolidates what they have learned. They articulate their understanding and explain how they used it in practice. Now the thing is that when we think about university teaching, and especially if we think of online learning environments, it's very easy to overemphasize the role of acquisition at the expense of the other types of learning. So what this model encourages us to do is take 6 steps when we are designing, when we're putting the learning design into practice. Now, first, we should start by reviewing our module or the lesson or the course and ask ourselves, what are the key things that we want our students to be able to do? What do we want them to learn? And this is, of course, directly related to what I was talking about earlier, the alignment of goals and activities and assessment. First, we need to be clear about the goals. What do we want the students to learn? The next step in ABC model is to tweet the module or course. It doesn't mean that we need to actually go to Twitter and tweet it, but we should be able to explain the core idea of the course in 140 characters, like a tweet, in one sentence. Like, what is the core? What is the most important thing here? The third step would be to review the learning types that we use in our module. And that was the previous slide. What are the types that we are currently using? And is it aligned? Is it compatible? Does it match with the learning outcomes that we have intended? So do the learning types direct student action towards our intention? Now, what we can do, there is on this slide, there is a picture like this, a diagram with the learning, with the 6 learning types. And this is an example of how we can actually illustrate to ourselves like what types of learning are dominating in our course, and are there any types of learning that we are not utilizing at all, but we would like to. So this is the 4th step, to consider the balance. Oh no, sorry, this is not the 4th step. This is still part of the 3rd step. Is there something that we want to include more or reduce in our course? To make it visual actually helps us in the learning design. The 4th one is also important, because we know we can have synchronous and asynchronous elements in our online course or any course. So synchronous meaning everyone being there at the same time, like we are now, but we shouldn't rely on that completely. We could also have asynchronous elements in our course, because this will support student learning when the teacher is not there, and sequence the materials and all the elements. And then check the learning types again, the revised learning types, and make an action plan. Okay, in this, for example, in my course, I want the students to be able to, I want my teacher students to be able to make lesson plans where they use emerging technologies. If this is the goal, they need to learn about making a lesson plan. Then probably, if my course content is very much only about acquisition, the students are probably not learning to make a lesson plan. They learn things about lesson plans, but if I don't include practice and production, then they are not learning to make their own lesson plan. They only hear things about lesson plans. Or if I want them to learn about team teaching, then I probably want to include collaboration because what use is it for them to know things about team teaching and not try team teaching at all? In that case, I would like to include collaboration and practice. Or if I want my students to learn to evaluate critically different learning theories and be able to justify and articulate their opinion about it, I would want there to be knowledge acquisition about the different learning theories, but I would also want to include investigation, because I want them to be able to reflect and build arguments and find more knowledge about it. And then I might want there to be discussion, because I would want them to be able to articulate their opinion and justify it. So you get the idea. Like, depending on the learning goals that you define at the beginning of this ABC process, you will then be able to choose the right types of learning. And when you have done that, then you can make an action plan of what should I then include in my course, like what kinds of activities will allow the students to produce or investigate or put into practice what they are learning. And here I have also included a link. All these ABC learning design model canvases and all these materials are Creative Commons licensed. So you can navigate to these websites, and if you're interested in using this, you can download, and there are videos to explain how to use them and so on and so forth. Now we have come to the end of the acquisition part of this lecture, and we might want to move on to the discussion part of this. So next week, I'm going to talk about authentic e-learning. And in that lecture, I will share examples, both practical examples from my teaching practice and also research findings. And we're going to talk about how to design authentic tasks. And here on the right-hand side, you can see the resources that I've used to build this lecture, and you can access all of them online. There's a research article by John Biggs about his constructive alignment theory, which is available through ResearchGate. Then there's a link to the ABC Learning Design, and also a link to a website about authentic learning if you already want to take a look before next week. But now I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I stop sharing the screen, and if there are any questions or comments or discussion, now might be a good time for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hanna Teras from the Tampere University of Finland. Thank you for the topic on keeping students engaged and motivated. Let me introduce to you first our next presenter. His topic is all about the learning guide for Inflex implementation. He is one of the SED of the College of Education Inflex trainer during our college-wide designing workshop in designing syllabus courses for Inflex modality. And he is a faculty of the DSME, or the Department of Science and Mathematics Education of the College of Education. He is no other than Professor Janelle B. Medina, faculty of said DSME. And let me remind everyone that after Sir Janelle's presentation, we'll have the workshop on learning guide, which will be the workshop on learning guide. And if there's more time, we'll have the showcasing and the critiquing of your output. And if there is no enough time, your file will just be uploaded to our Google Classroom. Now let's have the time to Professor Janelle B. Medina for the topic on learning guide for Inflex implementation. Sir?
Yes, thank you so much, Sir Glay. And good morning to everyone. Is my audio clear on your end? Give me a thumbs up if my audio is okay on your side.
Sir, we
Okay, sir.
cannot
Madunggan ka, sir.
hear you, sir.
Right. Thank you so much.
You are in mute.
Okay, great. All right, sige. So, as introduced by Sir Glay, I am Mr. Janil, and today I will be sharing to
Sir,
you.
Sir Janelle, excuse me, sir.
Yes, yes, sir.
We don't have an audio, sir.
Oh, okay, for a while.
Madungog ra diri, sir, sa kuan.
Check. How about that? Hello, my check.
Madungog ka, sir. Very clear.
Okay, good. Thank you. How about on your answer, Glide? Dungan ako? Okay, great. Sige. Thank you, Sir Nico. All right. So, in this morning, I was tasked to share to you, my dear colleagues and friends from MSU Marawi and Christ the King Baranding. I am so honored to be presenting to you this topic on learning guide for Inflex implementation. So this presentation is originally by Dr. Amelia Buwan, our College of Education Dean, and I am here to present to you um, this learning guide, guidelines or how to make one, and also injected along my presentation is my experience of designing learning guides and some other examples, no, of our experience in the implementation. And rest assured, there are also experts of whom I learned a lot from in this meeting, Sir Lubel Lucero and Ma'am Roxanne and the rest of the team from MSU-IIT. Definitely, they can help me out if there are some questions that I may not be able to answer. So, counting disclaimer lang. All right? So, let's not hesitate to share our thoughts later on. If you have questions, no, we can use the chat box or have a lively discussion after the input. All right, so allow me to present the outline of this presentation. First, I'm gonna share to you our outcome. No? So you've been shared with the intended learning outcome for this whole training, and part of that would be to produce our learning guides, no, for Inflex implementation. So I bet every one of you is already quite familiar of what Inflex would mean. Nevertheless, we'll kind of review a little bit on the synchronous and asynchronous learning and how it relates to Inflex. And then we will talk about the learning kit, and of which one of the main part of the learning kit is the learning guide and its parts. I will be sharing to you an example of how I created my own learning guides. And then we will talk about some considerations for developing the learning guide. And finally, we will share some principles on these considerations by sharing to you what the Inflex framework reach means. So later on, I will be discussing all of these things. So I was given an hour, so probably I will not finish the whole hour. I'm just gonna do my best to share to you this guide for creating or the creation of the learning guide. So this presentation is geared towards the Inflex implementation of MSU-IIT. So if there are some technical questions regarding the implementation, we might be able to answer some of that, but this is modified so that it would be applicable to all of us. But there are parts where the reference to the Inflex or the innovative flexible learning modality of MSU IIT is inevitable. So I also secured permission to use this presentation from Dr. Ami. So our goal for this session, my dear friends, colleagues, is to develop a learning guide, or at least to know what the learning guide looks like and how do we design the learning guide that would utilize, no, that would be utilized as a means to provide meaningful academic opportunities for our students while we are remotely monitoring their progress. So I think it was very helpful that we started our session for today with Dr. Hannah Terras on keeping students engaged and motivated, because Dr. Hannah shared to you about learning guides and learning design rather. And part of my sharing also would talk about how I utilize that learning design in designing my my very own learning guides. So let's get on with it. So you can raise your hand or cue or chat something if I will be speaking too fast or too slow or whatever. All right. Now, let's talk about synchronous and asynchronous learning first. So we are all aware, I bet you are all aware already of what's the difference with synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. So we know that synchronous learning, as mentioned by Dr. Hannah, is that everyone is learning at the same time. And while asynchronous is that they do it on their own pace. And in the synchronous learning, it is commonly supported by media such as video conferencing, just as what we're doing right now. And it has the potential to support learners in developing of learning communities because like we engage with one another in the synchronous learning. So it's like we are in one space of learning. However, in the synchronous learning, it's not simultaneous, but it can still, no? It can still facilitate learning. And what we identify in the innovative, flexible teaching is our capacity as teachers and facilitators of distance learning to tailor fit this synchronous and asynchronous learning activities, considering our students' varied access to technology and other resources. So that's what we are here for. No, we would want to tailor fit, and in this process of tailor fitting both synchronous and asynchronous learning activities, the learning guide plays a very important role. And that's what we want to talk about. So let me share to you how do we do things like how do we have synchronous learning or how do we have asynchronous learning in this innovative and flexible teaching experience in MSU-IIT. So this is my own experience, and in our synchronous learning, we mostly have Google Meets, no, and Zoom with FB Live. On my first term teaching in the Inflex modality, I experienced having Zoom meetings with a live session at our group. And then we also have a chat group discussions. And finally, we also have messenger group video calls for small groups consultation. But later on, it's mostly Google Meet already because Google Meet has the capacity to record so that we can use it for asynchronous resource later on if ever there are some members who are not present. So this is mostly what we are doing in the synchronous class: discussions, feedbacking, and sharing our thoughts, insights, reflections after some other activities. So also we also have I also experienced doing synchronous class on the live chat. So since most of my students before on the first term, they don't have access to internet, so they requested na we would have live sessions on our group. So that's what I did. So we have a synchronous class on our FB Live. I'm the only one on the Zoom meeting because they cannot come into the Zoom meeting. So they are all on the live and we discuss there. So it can also happen, in the Inflex teaching and learning process. So in the asynchronous learning, we facilitate this in our experience in MSU-IIT by mostly our MSU-IIT online learning environment. So I bet MSU Marawi and Christ the King in Marandin also have a select choice of LMS or the learning management system. And in MSU-IIT, we do mostly on Mole. And some faculty would prefer Google Classroom, but I think a few of the faculty. And in my experience, I also have a support FB group, because FB group is mostly very easy to access for my students. And so some urgent matters that would be announced and some quick links would be posted there. And as you saw, sometimes we also do live sessions on our FB group. And finally, through email and, of course, chats and messaging. So that's what happens. So allow me to share to you what our Molly would look like and how it plays a role in our asynchronous learning and teaching in the Inflex experience. So this is an example where most of my classrooms are in the Mole, and it becomes a repository of the asynchronous activity. So if they want to access the learning guides, it's there in the classroom. If they want to access some of the forum, it's in the classroom. And for most of the time, if we have synchronous discussions that not all of my students can attend, we record the session and then post it in our FB Live so that they can also check it out and basically still listen to the discussion that was made in the synchronous class. So that's mostly the interplay of the synchronous and asynchronous. So I'm talking about this because both the synchronous and asynchronous actually it's actually packaged in the Inflex learning kit. And as you know, initially, MSU-IIT planned to give students or to padala, no? There are even some cases, correct me if I'm wrong, no? Naman silang Dr. Luel Diri. And I think some of the faculty experienced that they really had their modules, learning kits printed and then given to the students, no, at the start of the first semester. So it was delivered for a 4 year, and MSU-IIT supported the faculty to provide for the 4 year piece. And that's the ideal for the learning kit, that the learning kit can be given totally offline, and at the same time, it also has an online counterpart to cater to the needs of the students. So what is this Inflex learning kit about? So the learning kit is basically the whole of the course packaged into one whole kit, where you can see there the learning guides, you can see there the videos, modules. On the printed media, though, you cannot have pre-recorded video, but there will be some links that will be included. You have templates and assessment guides and other relevant resources. However, my dear colleagues and participants, in the recent term, mostly our learning kits is converted into digital ones. So we expect our students to have at least this minimum gadget to access this digital learning kit. So later on, I will be sharing to you what my digital learning kit would look like. And this is on the course EDM 132, which is on problem solving and mathematics investigation. So this is what my first week of module looks like. And this is a digital learning kit where all the resources, all my presentations, all the discussions are already there. So you see there is the learning guide, there are those ebooks and reading materials, there are reflection templates in the learning guide and the assessment guide as well. We also have some Jamboard discussions. So those are in blue. So those are other relevant resources and presentations for the particular week. So this learning kit is given to the students through our LMS, so that even if they cannot go to our LMS, we can post a link somewhere else, and then our students can just access it on their own time. So that's how the Inflex learning kit works. And the major part of the learning kit is the learning guide, where the activities are all there. And that's what I am going to talk about next. So here, let's talk about the parts of the learning guide. And this one looks kind of fancy. This is our first output for creating the learning guide on the first term. So thanks to Dr. Luel, Roxanne, we're able to develop our own learning guides. And this one is for EDM 107. However, the cover looks fancy, but the content needs a lot of work. Dagan pagig kulang ana. But nevertheless, this is the bare minimum of what a learning guide should have. So first, we have the learning outcomes, and as you can see, there are some icons there that will indicate some crucial part. And learning outcomes is one of the key parts there. So as you can see, so we have here the intended learning outcome for this module. So this intended learning outcome is very important. And let me just have where's laser something, laser point. There you go. So here is the learning outcomes, right? And of course, the course materials are discussed there. and the learning activities on the next parts with some activities, application, reflection, and the assessment tools and submission guidelines. So this is the core of what the learning guide should have. No? So learning outcomes, materials, learning activities, reflection and application, and then the assessment tools, including the submission guidelines. So let's talk about this in detail one by one. Let's talk about the learning outcome first. So let's have that. So this is the first part of the learning outcome, and I bet on the first day you already learned how to create or transform your OBE face-to-face syllabus into an OBE remote teaching and learning syllabus. And there, I think Sir Professor Jay talked about the vertical alignment and the horizontal alignment. And this is also very important in developing our learning guides because the learning guides should correspond to these parts of the syllabus so that it will be clear for the students that what is intended for them to do. No? Para claro sa, it would be clear for our students what they are supposed to do in a particular course. So in this illustration, I'll be sharing to you my learning guide for EDM 132, which is on problem solving and mathematics investigation. So just bear with me with the math topic. So I know that not all of you are math majors, but you can just see the parts. And for the sake of illustration, let's dive into it. So the learning outcomes, in my practice, I always pattern it on the intended learning outcome for each week or for each module. So so that the students would be able to track their own progress. So for example, in this module, so we're here already in the week 2. So this is my intended learning outcome. I need to have this. So it's very clear for the students to easily track their own progress asa na sila in these activities. So I adopted the weekly duration effort part. So recently, because I'm also doing some action research on this, hopefully it would yield something that is helpful for my own practice as I reflect in this implementation. So that's learning outcomes. It's derived from the course goals. So at the beginning, we have the course goals that is aligned to the standards, the outcomes of the institution, of the program. So that's where we reflect the vertical alignment of the outcomes. So those course goals translate, i-translate nato siya dito na tayo sa on the ILO of the learning plan. So from the course goals, we develop learning outcomes from there. And then from those learning outcomes, we develop the TLAs, the learning resources, the assessments, and so on and so forth. So besides the learning outcome, though, it's important also to kind of give our students an overview of what to expect in that particular learning guide or in a particular module. And I in my practice, I also add a set of objectives, and these objectives is aligned exactly, in my practice, aligned exactly to the teaching and learning activities that is reflected in the syllabus. So let's get on to that specific example. So this is week 2, and this is unit 1 on problem solving, week number 2, and that's our topic. The learning type for this week is acquisition. So if you've heard kanina of Dr. Hannah talking about the ABC design. So this is where I injected the ABC design in my own learning guide. So it's clear for the students that this module is about acquisition. So it's expected for them to acquire the necessary knowledge. So I have here the overview and the objectives. So if you can remember, these objectives, there are 3 major objectives, which corresponds in my practice to that 3 major teaching and learning activities. Right? So para very clear sa ilaha that this is my checklist on what to do. Number 1, I have to read. Number 2, I have to create an essay. Number 3, I have to be in the class discussion. So very clear for the students of what is expected for them. So that's my practice. So overview, and then you have the intended learning outcome, and then after that is the objectives. And of course, the objectives is derived from the intended learning outcome, which is, in this case, is to write a brief essay that explains George Polya's views on mathematics teaching and his 4 steps of problem solving with solved problem as illustration. So very clear for the students what to expect after this particular week. They have to have this outcome done. So that's the first part. That's learning outcomes. Let's go into the materials. So course materials, unit materials, or module materials, it depends on the length or the coverage of your module. So if your module is like for the whole course, of course you have to explain the whole of the course materials that you would have. But if it's just for the module, then you can specify certain materials for the module. So the course materials are to be tailor fit to the kind of learning activity. In my experience, since this is acquisition, so I thought that it would be more of readings because they have to acquire knowledge. And of course, it's not limited to this specific course materials. What I do though in having this course materials is that I give them descriptions of what they expect in this material and what are the things that they might actually pay attention to. So for example, if I provide a reading, for example, here in the bibliography of George Polya, I explained to them that this is gives you a brief recount of George Polya's life, select quotes, and so on. So just to get the students feel like, should I start with this resource or should I start with another resource? So just that brief description help scaffold the students to prioritize what might they. So kasi it's not necessary na basahon yun nila tanan in this particular order. So giving them a description can be helpful also on how to use the course materials and what to do with the course material. So if you want to include some resources that are multimedia resources, for example, it's also good to have them to explain how to use that particular material. If you can also include some guides, how to use the materials, that can also be very helpful. So in this particular example, as you can see, it's mostly readings, but it's encouraged with the diversity of our students to have multimodal strategy. So ibig sabihin, in one particular knowledge or particular set of resources, you have to have different modalities of how they can acquire the knowledge, be it by reading, be it by looking at a video, be it by an interactive resource or something like that. So if it's appropriate and if it's accessible, then please you're encouraged to do multimodal strategy in providing course materials. So that's course materials. We're done with the learning outcomes, the overview and the objectives, and then we also have the course materials. Let's proceed to the next, on to the learning activities. So in this particular example, in 1 week, since I am I'm trying to implement in this particular course, the ABC learning design. And in my implementation of the ABC learning design, I also adopted the weekly schedule. So our week would have one specific learning activity that would both either, so depending on the learning type, so it's this learning type is acquisition, and the mode for this activity is individual. It means that the students would have to do it on their own, so not with friends. So there is instruction, there is a guide for the essay, there's a template, an example sa baba, and although this template is a little bit very brief, but it can spur discussion. So in my experience, pag makita ni when my students see this example, they will be asking additional questions, and those additional questions would be discussed in our synchronous class. So, and then I'm gonna be giving them more specific examples for that. So a template is helpful to model what kind of outcome is expected for them. So that's one helpful, practice in providing for learning activities. And then you also have that submission guidelines. So in my case, I always have this in all of my activities. So you have that output. What's the output, expected output for that particular activity, essay? What's the assessment purpose so that they would know if this particular activity is graded or not. So here, this is summative, okay? Acquisition, since it's acquisition, the essay would be appropriate assessment type to learn whether or not they acquired the necessary knowledge. specifications of the submission, so it's all there. And then where would they submit? So it's actually an assignment in our LMS. So meron kaming assignment, so nakalagay doon assignment on week 1. So they would have to submit there on that assignment submission bin. And then you have the submission format. It's up to you, but in my practice, I'd like them to submit by the drive link instead of the whole document. And then, of course, the content would be name, essay title, essay reference. So that's how I do my submission guidelines. And that's learning activities. In the learning activities, I also include some reflections, of which we ask these reflections during our synchronous activities. So just so you know, in a week, for example, they'll be given time to do the asynchronous activities, the readings, the doing of the essay, and yeah, in this particular week. And then on the last meeting day. So usually in MSU-IIT, we do by batch. So in batch 1, our classes would be MTH, and in the batch 2, it's TF. So on the batch 1, since this is batch 1, we meet on Thursdays. So like the last meeting days. So we meet for an hour or two, depending on the length of the discussion. So most of the time, 1 hour to 1.5 hours, just to discuss what they've learned on the asynchronous tasks that they did. And of course, you have to provide the assessment tools that would be used to grade them. So in this case, I just described the descriptor, the highest descriptor for each of the rubric that is used. So for example, content, argumentation, illustration, problem solving process. So those are all 10 points. So that's very important for the learning guide. So we are now through with the different parts of the learning guide. We have the learning outcomes, we have the course materials, we have the activities, and of course the assessment guide. So these are all parts of our learning guide. So I'm going to show you next another example of this learning guide. So this is the one that I initially showed, which is on the history of mathematics. So here, this is much more complicated and not as straightforward as the first example, but they serve the purpose. And in my experience, this is a good experience for me because in this experience, I learned how to make my learning guides more straightforward and translate other parts into the LMS instead of including it in um, the learning guide. No, since it was quite impossible for me to deliver the learning guide through a 4 year. So wala na lang I decided to take the forum away and place it on the appropriate media, which is our LMS. So here, you can still observe the different parts, the intended learning outcome, the objectives. So may pa-reminder pa ako before. And then we have the course materials. And then included on the learning activities, for example, are, for example, here, forum. So this is a particular example of a forum that is placed in the learning guide. However, in the later part, in the next term, I stopped placing it on the learning guide. Instead, I placed it on the LMS already. So we have here the readings, and then optional videos to watch and instructions, and then some activities, exercises, some analyses. So this is already on the application part of the learning activities. So this is the, what do we call this? This is already going towards the learning outcome for this particular module. So analyses, because gagawa sila ng concept. So there are guides also, and there are some templates. Okay, so guides. So here, so after this page is a template actually, and then you have some module review, assessment tools, and rubric for concept mapping, and rubric for collaboration. So this is another example of a learning guide. In my practice, this learning guide is synonymous to what my LMS would look like. So the mole, everything in the mole is what is reflected in the learning guide, because initially, yeah, as I shared to you, that the intention for developing this kind of learning guide is to have this printed and delivered to the student who really has no access whatsoever to online tools. So that's the initial intention for creating this learning guide. However, in the later part, we kind of made compromise that the students should have at least an access to the digital learning kit, of which it's easier now to manage than this kind of learning guide. So that's the learning guide. And I still have a couple of minutes to move forward. Let me share then now to you some considerations in developing these learning materials. And these considerations is of course the context of our students. So in this particular graph, this is conducted June 2020. This is around last year. No, we surveyed the students and what are their gadgets at home, and this is the basis for developing this kind of learning materials in for the college. And we categorize them. So as you notice, no, so in the category one, we have here at least with a smartphone, but has no access to online technology tools. So this is initially the category where we print the learning guides or the modules and then deliver it to them. However, I am not sure if there have been faculty that is successful in this endeavor. So in my experience, wala ako nakapadala o module. So what I did is that I converted it digital and sent it. At least I know that they would have an access to it, no, before going forward with the course. So here they have to have PDF modules. So instead of printed, it's PDF because PDF is easier and the formatting would not be distorted if they download it, unlike Word files and the like. Recorded lectures. The idea here was that again, it would be given to them, and the initial idea was to provide them, uh, a disk, no, a small USB disk. So just to give to them. However, ulit, no, by logistics limitations, hindi po natin na-implement ito very thoroughly. So of course, some of the submissions are really made through courier. So ginapadala yun sa MSU-IIT before. And category two, this is the category where we think about our students who has some kind of enough devices but limited access to data and the internet. So, yan, same, but pwede na yung pwede na yung para bang small online communications, no? And of course, the category three. In my experience, every time I access or I what is this? I survey my students. So by the way, before we start our class, we really have to survey our students what their categories are, because it's important to know what kind of students am I dealing with, what kind of resources I need to prepare, or should I revise my materials and so on. So this is a part of the considerations in developing our learning materials in the Inflex implementation. So in my experience, most of the students would really settle with category two, even if they are category three. I don't know why, no? I don't know why there is a kind of tendency for the students to para bang minimize, no? Para bang minimize nila ang ilang category. Instead of saying category three, they do have full access to online technology tools, but they never say it's category three. We're in category two, sir. So even if I kind of interviewed them, they would still claim them category 2 lang, sir. So like, I don't know what's with that, but most of the time it's the category 2 that's most numerous in my classes. So we have to convert we have to have the learning kits as digitalized and then send them, through the LMS and through email. So here, I'm going to be sharing next to you, aside from the consideration, the resources that the students have, is that some principles in designing, of course, I'm not an expert on this, but I think Dr. Hannah touched on this a while back. And of course, the later lectures would also give you more idea on how we can reach, from the school to the homes of the students. So that's the idea there, to reach our students. So this reach framework is actually embedded in the Inflex framework that was discussed by Dr. Ami and was adopted in MSU-IIT for the Inflex implementation. So that reach is actually meaning to pertaining to the relevant, engaging, achievable, clear, holistic learning activities that is geared towards learners' success. No? So that's the framework about. So let's start on relevance. No? So the relevance in designing our learning materials, we would want that our outcomes, content, even our resources, the kind of activities that we do, we want that it's relevant for the students, something that they can closely relate to, that and also appropriate for them. So, for example, on the learning outcomes, we consider, so yung sinabi ni Dr. Hannah kanina, when we apply the ABC learning design, for example, we think about the kind of capsulated vision of what my students would do in this particular course, the tweeting, diba? So if you can recall that step, when we create a tweet about what the course is. So we think about what knowledge, skills, and attitudes will have students, after completing this course. So in our practice in MSU-IIT, in every syllabus that we have, we have this. We write the vision, the mission, the goals, and of course, your schools will also have that. And these outcomes are also, reflected, because from these outcomes, we actually tailor fit, our course intended learning outcome so that it would be relevant for them. And of course, it's relevant to the goal of the program. So that's one. And we also provide for them relevant content, something that they can apply in their real life. So in this example that I'm sharing to you, this is a project. This is actually, I'm not sure what module is this. Yeah, this is module 4 of my EDM 107, where they really have to have like project planning. So it's a real life skill of negotiating ideas, setting schedule, negotiating resources, because they are of different categories. So working together, category 1, category 2, category 3, working together in that particular group. So in what context might it be possible, for and appropriate in the flexible learning course? So here the context is to create a particular project, for the history of mathematics, since it's history of mathematics. So yun, let's think about how to make content relevant for our students. Next, to relevant content is, of course, relevant resources. So for each discipline, we have different sets of resources that is available at our reach. For example, in the sciences, they have simulations. For example, as you can see at the back, that's a simulation. In physics, they have PhET simulations. That's another thing. In other disciplines, they also have a lot of resources that are relevant for our disciplines. What we want to do is that we want to think about, is these resources within their reach? Is this resources something that they are aware of? Or is this resource something that can maximize higher order thinking skills? So those are considerations when we think about how to make our learning materials relevant for our students. So next to relevance is engagement. And I need not to talk about a lot on engagement, because this is what Dr. Hannah was talking about a while ago. So we have just to think about how to engage them. And from the call 1990, experiential learning, is very much relevant in engaging our students. And of course, social learning is important as well. So let them experience, let them be engaged in the learning tasks. And as mentioned by Dr. Hannah, kanina, when we want to engage our students, we want them to be active, we want them to be willing to extend effort, and we want them to be eager to participate. And we can do that by engaging them on the authentic tasks. Some tasks that are inventive, realistic, and complex enough for them to collaborate. So I think it's already mentioned, in the presentation of Dr. Hannah about Professor John Harrington, about authentic tasks. So what I'm sharing to you here, some of these screenshots are my students doing some authentic tasks in their respective places, even though they are miles apart. So what they're doing is that they're investigating a certain phenomena and trying to create a mathematical model in what they're doing. So for example, here they want to prove a particular historical approach by Thales of Miletus in actually measuring the height of certain tall objects. So that's what they did. So even if they are far miles apart, they are working together as a group. So that's a project. And on this picture, what they did is that they investigated the relationship of bounce height. So Jay is in a different place, Bless is in a different place, and Mikey is in a different place, but they're doing one activity. They consolidate their findings together and make conclusions as a team. So I think that's one of the challenge in really trying to engage our students in the learning materials that we learn. And here, I provided you with some link. No, this is actually the authentic task that was mentioned by Dr. Hannah. If it's not part of the coverage for this training, you can check this out in YouTube. No? And she talks in length about these elements, and she mentioned about sharing her findings in the research and teaching experience. So all of these things, you can look into it more details in this particular place. All right, so our goal, para bang our framework for engagement, in this learning activities is that the learning kits that we created, and then by communicating to them what these learning kits would have is to have them engaged in those learning materials. So either collaborative activities, group meetings, tracking individual student progress, giving feedback. So the learning kit plays a very vital role in that engagement of activities. That's why when we design our learning guides, it's important to have these principles in mind. And of course, after the relevance, engagement, next is achievable activities, achievable learning tasks. In thinking about our learning materials and our activities, is that we have to think about the task, the goal, and at the same time, the resources that our students have. So that's why I shared to you that as we start our class, we always survey our students. What categories are you in? So are you in category one? Are you in category two? Because we have to try and fit them into the learning materials that we develop. So we have to think about the resources that they have, the kind of task, if it's appropriate or not. So that's achievable. And next to achievable is that it's clear, clear or clarity. So clarity in task directions, clarity in the task alignment, clarity in assessment, clarity in grading. So here, in this particular example, we want to provide students learning materials that has clear directions. So avoid ambiguity and confusion. So in terms of the instructions that we give, we need to use clear and precise language, explain the purpose of the task. That's why we have some kind of overview for a particular module, because we have to explain the purpose of the task. Where is this task going, and what is this task role in achieving the whole course outcome, and describe the specifics. So these are some of the things that you can do to make your learning guide, your learning materials more more engaging for our students by having that clarity in the directions. Aside from the directions, is that we have to have also give them a picture of a clear task alignment. It means that you have to see that the whole course outcome is actually achieved by the little outputs that they feed every week or every module that they have. No? So it should be clear for them. No? It should be clear for them. So for example, here, very clear, para bang the alignment. No? So this output one, this output two, this output three, these are here. No? If you backtrack it, it all comes down to the achievement of the course outcome. In my experience, for example, here, I make this more apparent by really just translating the course goals. So every time my students look into the syllabus that they have, the course goal corresponds to the weekly tasks that they do. No? Although it's not really like 1:1, but it's really on the tasks that they do every week. So for example, here, the first three course goals is translated into the ILO of the first 3 weeks. And the learning activities is very clear. And you have to have, if you have, for example, here, the forum, I place there little F, so like that F mark there, it means that the forum is formative. It means that it builds. No, it builds. It's not something that is graded, but it builds up. No, out towards our course goal. So it's formative. Here we have summative, essay, and then discussion is formative for giving feedback, for checking their understanding, and so on and so forth. So here, very clear, no, very clear for the students. And of course, in my practice, I also place their points for clarity of how they are graded. And later on, we will look into that. So next is that we have to have a clear assessment purpose for each of the tasks that we give to the students. For example, this is one scheme that you can follow: gauging student needs, encouraging collaboration, self-direction, monitoring progress, checking understanding, demonstrating understanding. That's one scheme by which you can look into the kind of assessment purpose that you have, or you can also adapt a kind of a learning design. So for example, in my practice, in EDM 132, as I shared to you a while ago, I adopted the ABC learning design that was discussed by Dr. Hannah and used the six learning types to my advantage. And it was very helpful. It was very helpful to make my TLAs more varied and purposive and clear for the students. What are we doing and why are we doing this? So very clear for the students for each week. No, they have to do a kind of a learning type. And this best fits. No, for example, here, this is the distribution of the learning activities that my course has in EDM 132. That is reflected on all of the learning guides that I developed, and of course in the LMS. In the course, EDM 132 is actually practice. So practice ni siyang level, di ba? Sa OBE, kaya naman tayo practice, introductory, and demonstrated. O, tama ba IPO? Or ito isa, nalimot ko. So practice, demonstrated, and introductory. So in EDM 132 is practice. So most of the course would expectedly have practice and discussion and investigation because it's already on the level by which the students already practice with certain competency. And in this case, this is the problem solving and investigation. So clear assessment purpose. And then, of course, a clear grading system. So I also adopted the strategy of Dr. Lowell to have my grading system with points. And these points is corresponding to the week, no, sa heaviness, sa week that they spend. So in my practice, I give them like 30 points per week. So like a week worth of work is actually 30 points. So as you can see, in the week 7, it's only 10 points, but in week 8, it's 50 points because overall the 2 weeks that they spend together is creating the mathematics investigation project. So combining the 2 weeks, they have to have 60 points. And of course, the last week, that's already our culmination, that's only 10 points. No? So very clear for the students, asagikan ilang scores, and very clear for them if they have a goal, for example, of getting a flat 1 in my course, they have to reach at least 210 points. So that's very clear, and that's communicated to the students at the very first part. And of course, we want to consider holistic approach in our learning. So of course, aside from the academics, we also look into how they are. So in my synchronous activities, I always consider whether or not kumusta sila. So like I spend 10 minutes to just ask them, how are they doing? And of course, the choice of the resources that I give them is also very much influenced by the inclusivity. For example, if you notice that most of my resources are reading materials because that's the bare minimum that I can ask them. If I recommend videos, I never have the videos as how do I say that, as compulsory, because it's there are many students that cannot sustain watching videos online. So that's why most of my activities is either presentations, annotated lectures, and of course PDFs. So I think that's it. That's it on my end. Our final words for as we prepare our learning guides is that let's always think about how to make our learning guides, our activities relevant, engaging, achievable, clear, and holistic so that we can support students or the learner's success in this time of the pandemic. So I think yeah, 47 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone, and I hope that you learned something in the sharing. And my only reference is the presentation of Dr. Buwan. So if you are interested on the presentation of Dr. Buwan, you can scan this QR code sa yung original na presentation. And if you want to have this presentation as well, you can get it at this particular link. So I think I'd stop there. And Sir Glai, do we have time for question and answer, perhaps? So once again, thank you everyone for your
Thank you,
kind
Sir
attention.
Junel, for the topic on learning guide for Inflex implementation. Right now, we'll have a question and answer. So let us ask our participants if you have questions regarding the topic of Sir Junel. He is much willing to answer all your queries for Inflex modality. Let us now start our afternoon session. We hope that we have rested for the lunch break and we eat well. To start our program this afternoon, the after my part will be the presentation on development of an online learning environment using Google Workspace for teaching and learning. It will be given to us by one of the faculty from the UPOU, or the University of the Philippines Open University, Dr. Ria Borromeo. After in the middle of the discussion of Ma'am Rhea, we'll have a health break for 10 minutes. And after that one will be it will be the after the health break, it will be the showcasing of your activity on Google Workspace of teaching and learning. So we may request the participants that as Dr. Ria Borromeo have his discussion about the Google Workspace for teaching and learning, we have a synchronous activity that you will also do the activity at the same time she's discussing the topic on Google Workspace. After that is a showcasing from each of the group, from the Christ the King College of Maranding and also from the MSU Marawi. And it will be facilitated by Dr. Roxanne Consolacion and also Dr. Lowell Lucero. After that will be the closing part of this program for today's day 2 of the Inflex modality webinar. Let us now give the time for our presentation, which will be given by Dr. Ria Borromeo.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ria May Borromeo, and I will be talking about a quick guide to Google Classroom. Here in UPOU, we have been holding our classes completely online. We are using the platform Moodle, but for this tutorial, I will introduce you, if you have not yet tried, Google Classroom. Google Classroom is a learning management system by Google, and it's available to anyone who has a Google account. Before, it used to be available only to those who are subscribed to Google Education. But now, even if you just have a normal Gmail account, you can set up your own classroom. You can try it out right now. Just go to the URL classroom.google.com, and you can also download it in your phones and tablets. So I will talk about the following. A quick guide on how to get started with Google Classroom, creating assignments and materials, creating quizzes using Google Forms, and grading and leaving feedback. So I will do a live demonstration using Google Classroom. So this is a sample class. And this is what the Google Classroom is like. There is a stream, just like in Facebook, wherein activities and posts are written. So, for example, there is a message and anyone can just comment. So it's very simple replying to posts like that, and you can view the activities there. Now I would like to to set up a new Google Classroom so we can try how to create a new one. So it's very simple. In your Google Classroom homepage, you just click this button and create a class. So there is this notice and mostly a privacy and security notice. Now I'm going to create a class for my IS second semester. And so it's now creating the class, and it's as simple as that. You now have a classroom. You can customize it by selecting themes. Since this is a technical class, I'll choose this theme. And you can already start posting for your class to view. Welcome to IS. Something like that. So now, when students come in, they will see this post and they can interact among each other here by commenting on the post. Now, let us set up the classroom further. This settings is very important because you can customize your classroom to do what you want. For example, in the stream, you can customize whether you want the students can only comment or teachers can only comment. So there are settings here that you can play around with, and you can modify them so that it can do what you want. And this is a new feature that I just discovered recently, the grade calculation. You can actually it's now very easy to calculate the grades. 2 years ago when I tried this, this feature was not there yet. So I had to do Excel. I still had to import the grades to Google Sheets and calculate it there. But here now you can add grade category. For example, I want like quizzes to be 100 points and sorry. So this is like my grading scheme for the class. So if quizzes are like 50% and assignments are also 50%, then later on, the activities will be calculated. The final grade will be calculated according to these categories. And we can show the overall grade to students. And then you can save it. Next, let's start adding activities. To add activities, we go to classwork. And then we create the activities by just clicking create. You can see it's very simple. The first thing I normally do is create topics because topics organize your class. So for this class, I will create several topics. For example, initial proposal and another implementation. So the topics are, you can see the topics on the left, and these are the major topics in my course. Then I would start to add the activities I want for each topic. I can add first a question. What? And then I can select the category. So this is an assignment, so that later on in the grading, it can calculate automatically. It's for all students. the due date, you can set the due date on Monday, and you can set the time at 11:59 p.m. or whatever time you want. Okay. The topic will be under initial proposal. So it will be organized. And no, I don't want students to reply to each other. So with that, I can just ask this question. And it will be here. And it will also be seen in my stream, in the stream of the classroom. What type of project are you interested in doing? So the students will see that later on when I add them, but let's do that later. Next, I will create an assignment. Again, it's for all students. I am giving it 100 points, and it's another assignment. The due date should be Wednesday. Okay. The topic will be for the implementation. So I'm just asking them to upload the source code of their project here. I can also choose to add links for more information about these assignments, and also files in Google Drive if you want to attach, or other files in your desktop you can upload, and video links. And you can also add a document or any Google document here. For example, I will add this Google Doc, because I want my students to put in their answers here. So make a copy for each student. Each student will then have a copy of this, and they can answer here, and I will be able to check it later. I guess it's not appropriate because you don't really put your source code in the Google Docs, so I will delete this for now. But I'm just saying that that's an option. Okay. And then here's a more exciting thing, or more complicated. It's creating a quiz. So in Google Classroom, the quiz is implemented through Google Forms. So let's write quiz number 1. And you have to edit the Google Forms. We are used to using Google Forms probably in surveys, but not really as quizzes. But we can actually do that. So sorry if that was fast, but when you create the assignment, there will be the quiz, there will be a link to a Google form, and then you just click it, and then it will lead you to the Google form that you have to customize. Again, you have to check the settings here and select the options that you prefer, but I would like to set options here. So you can see here, there's the option to immediately release the grade after each submission, or you can just set later after manual review. And if you want the respondents to see missed questions, correct answers, and point values, you can also see that. You can also choose that. And then we save that. Then now we can start here. Sorry. Here, you are requiring the students to input their email addresses. So maybe you want to do this to identify your students. So I will keep that there. Now for the questions, there are many types of questions that you can use: short answer, paragraph, multiple choice, checkbox, drop down, and even file upload, and all these. So for the multiple choice questions that we have in our exam, we are covered already: the essay, the identification, and the choose many, multiple choice for the checkboxes. Let's start with the multiple choice. 1 plus 1. Okay, so the options are 0, 1 plus 1. 1 or 2. Okay. So what's the answer? And we can add the answer key here. And I will set it at 2. This is very confusing if you're like studying computer science, but suppose this is math, like math algebra, then 1 plus 1 should be 2. Okay, so we set the points, 1, and then that's there. We have that first question in our quiz. You can make it required. And then we add another question. So how about a short answer? Short answer. What? When is the date? Okay. When was the Philippines discovered? Okay, so actually you can set that as a date for this type of question. You have to manually check it. They, unlike the multiple choice wherein you can set the answer key, here you can just add the feedback, but you still have to manually check the answer of the student. So the answer is, I will just add this as a feedback. Is this correct? Okay. Okay, at least I still remember. Okay. So let's give that 2 points because it's harder. Maybe. Anyway, that's just the idea of making quizzes. And you can also make this a required question or maybe not, because students have the option to skip questions, right? Let's try another one, an essay exam paragraph. And then just ask, what can you say about Google? Again, this has to be manually checked. So just add some manual feedback and then 5 points. And then that's it. You have a quiz. Let's change this. Sample quiz. Later on, we'll try this out as students. We'll see this from the student's perspective. I'm just setting it up from the perspective of the teacher. But then later, we'll try it out. And when you preview it, so it will be like this. Okay. So let's go back to our Google Classroom. And we want now the blank quiz, this thing that we made, it's still blank quiz. It's like making an assignment and having the link to the Google form as an attachment to the assignment. So it's going to be like this. Let's also set a due date and then assign it. And let's add a category, quiz, and assign. Okay. So now, let's just add one more assignment for the final proposal. Assignment. Oops. And what's good about Google Classroom is that it saves your drafts. So when you're working on something and then you got interrupted, it will automatically save drafts. And so I was not able to save it, but I can come back to it and continue working on it. Now it's again an assignment, 100 points for all students. Just set the dates and the topic will be final. And I will add a Google Docs file for every student. But why is it not working? Sign. Okay. Okay. Now let's edit it. because, okay, now it's working. So sometimes it doesn't work, just try again. Because yeah, sometimes it's just because of some network interruptions. So you can always just try again. So I want students to edit this. Okay. Now, in the stream, everything that we created, all the activities that we posted are there. Have I forgotten? Oh, also, you can add materials here. And these could be slides, YouTube attachments, YouTube videos for your tutorials, ebooks. So you can also post them in your Google Classroom and share it with your students. Now that the classroom is set up, this is after setting up the classroom, then we can invite the students. Usually you set it up first before inviting people so that they don't see what you're working on yet. Now I can invite students, or just I can email them by typing the email addresses, or I can just ask them to go to Google Classroom and enter this class code. Now, here's a very important thing to note. If you are using up.edu.ph, you can only invite students who have the same email address, I mean domain. So up.edu.ph classrooms should have students that have up.edu.ph email addresses. And it's the same for all Google Education apps, domains. But if you have Gmail, then that's more flexible because you can invite anyone who's from Gmail. So if anyone who's watching here has their Gmail account, you can just go to Google Classroom and join the class with this code. You can try to join this class if you're interested in joining it. So it's YNO30TP. Go to classroom.google.com and then join the class if you want to join this class. Let's see if people will join this class. Okay, no one's joining my class. I will just join my class. Oh, someone joined. Thank you. Now you can please try out the activities and post there somehow. I will join. Oops. This is an account, a student account. Now I'm a student. I will join a class by doing this. So I just click this button and then join a class. And I enter the code. And now I am part of the class IS295A. I see that these are the deadlines for me, the due dates, and all the assignments in here. Hello. I can reply to yes to myself. This is a test account. And my fake name is Smila. And I will try to answer. Oh, nice. So Joanne, thank you for answering this. To answer an assignment in Google Classroom, what you have to do is actually comments are okay, but the way to submit assignments is typing your answer here. And let's say I want to do research as well, and then you click turn it in. Because if you don't turn it in, the teacher will not see that you have submitted the assignment. It's different from just a class comment. The class comment is available for everyone in the class to see, but your assignment is the one that you turned in will be for your teacher. And also you can post private comments. What kind? Yeah. There. So that's a private comment. And I can also do this, add or create. So here's another assignment. I can add or create my work here, but I'm not yet going to do this. Maybe let's just answer the quiz. And I will answer the quiz as a student. So, this is the quiz that we created earlier. The answer is 2 March 16. And it's very easy to use. So after submitting that, you see that you have already submitted in the quiz as a student. And then lastly, oops, sorry. I want to, oh no. Oh, wow. Wow, there are so many students now. I was so surprised. Okay, 33 students. Wait, I want to be a student again, and then I will answer one of this. Oh, you love Google Classroom. That's great. Please use it. I hope it can be helpful. Anyway, I will do an assignment, my final paper, and edit the Google document that the teacher gave me. So this is my assignment. So yeah. Okay. And then I mark as done. So you also have to note that you have to mark as done your assignments or submit. Okay. And then next, let's go back. So you see that there are already interactions in our Google Classroom. Hello to everyone who are now students here. Feel free to try them out. If you would notice earlier, there were in this part, in the upcoming, there were many things listed. But because I have already submitted them, the ones that I had to do, only one is there. So this is the only one that I haven't finished yet. So it's like reminding me that I have to do this. But the rest, once you submit this will also be gone. So let's try that. Upload your source code. I just mark it as done, but I won't upload anything. And then I go back. So, no work due soon, because I did everything. Okay. So as a student, that's generally what we can see. Now let's go back to being a teacher. There. So I want to see the work that my students have done so I can check them. Here, one student turned in the final proposal. And I will just click it to see what was submitted. But there's nothing really submitted here. So I can just say, where is your So this is how we communicate with the students. So because they can just click turn it in, but there's nothing really. So you can just talk to them here, and it's a good way of communicating. It's a private comment anyway. And now we can see the projects they're interested in. Oh, nice. There are 6 people who turned in their assignments. We can action research, AI applications, research, and qualitative. So this is how the teacher would see the submissions of the students, and you can give them a grade. I will give 100, 100, 100. Because Myla is fake. And then I will return it to the students. So you will see on your side that I have already given you grades. And you can also add comments like, great job. There. So those are the basic features of Google Classroom. I think the things that we do in our classes can be imported here. And as for us, from using Moodle to Google Classroom, I tried it to just compare which one is better. Google Classroom is much more easier to use, I think, and it has the app, and the app is nicer. It's like a social networking application. However, Moodle is very sophisticated in terms of features. Like it has more advanced features for distance education, like workshops, collaboration. So for more advanced features, I would still recommend Moodle. But for general classroom management, I think Google Classroom is a good option, especially right now, since most of us have Gmail or Google accounts, and we can use it freely. Yeah, so I think that's it for Google Classroom. And another thing, before I forget, that's good about Google, so let's thank Google, is that it has this Google Hangouts Meet. So for everyone who has a Google Education account, you can set up video meetings or like Hangouts with many people involved there. So if you want to hold your classes synchronously, you can try this out. Maybe we'll have a demonstration of this. Maybe we'll have a demonstration of the Hangouts Meet next week, but you can look into it right now. So again, before I end my talk, I will just show you the class code so you can explore. This is it. There. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening. I hope it was helpful.
Thank you very much to our discussion for today, which was given by Dr. Ria Borromeo. Dr. Borromeo is from the UPOU, or the University of the Philippines Open University. She's also the one who trained the trainers of MSU-IIT during its first year in handling remote teaching and learning. So we thank Dr. Borromeo for sharing her expertise when it comes to creating a Google workspace for teaching and learning. At this point of time, the participants are given 20 minutes to finalize their learning guide for Inflex implementation. This discussion was given this morning by Professor Janelle B. Medina. That's why you have 20 minutes to finalize the learning guide for Inflex implementation. The format for this one is located in your Google Classroom. You may submit your output there, and after 20 minutes, we'll be having a showcasing of your outputs here in this webinar. We'll call representatives from the Christ the King College of Maranding, at the same time from the MSU Marawi main campus.
Hi sir, good afternoon. I'm
Good
from
afternoon, sir.
MSU main po. Sir, regarding with my output, I have already submitted it po sa Google Classroom.
Yes, sir. Okay. Sir, can you showcase to us your output, sir? Or can you present to us in this meeting?
Okay sir, let me try po.
Thank you, sir. Okay, let us welcome Sir Jesril Martinez. He will be showcasing to us his output in creating a learning guide for Inflex implementation. Let's give him a virtual round of applause.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. I am Jesril Martinez from Mindanao State University. So I have done one module for my consumer education subject. It is all about the introduction to taxation because this is one of the topic to consider as a consumer. So I have here the overview of the subject or of the module rather. So meron po dyan nakalagay na overview, the introduction, what is the module all about. And then I have here intended learning outcome. We have two. Write a comprehensive summary of the different types of national and local taxes in the Philippines, and then they are about to explain the importance of tax reform for the acceleration and inclusion law or the trade law. And then these are the objectives. The same with our presenter earlier. So I have stated here five of the objectives. So at the end of the week, the students are expected to do this. So ito po siya. Then after the objective, I have also added learning progress in order for our students to track the progress or hanggang saan na sila. They can evaluate or they can monitor kung patapos na ba sila sa module. So we have here the learning process. So they're about to read the readings using the link provided and then watch a video. After they have watched the video, they are going to group themselves and then discuss the different types of taxes in the Philippines. And then they are going to write the comprehensive summary as our intended learning outcome stated. And then the last one is to answer the question attached in the Google Classroom. So if they have already answered, so it's they can now say that they are already done with the module. So here, next is the resources or the learning materials that I can provide them. So based on the objectives, I have stated there that they are going to read. So I have here readings. So I have added two readings, links, ayan, taxation in the Philippines, and then instruction, and then tax reform for acceleration and inclusion law, the link, and then the instruction also. And then lastly, we have the video, as I have told them to read, to watch a video. So I have include here a link of the video and then give them instruction to watch more related videos for that, for them to have idea pagdating ng discussion nila. And then after that, after the resources, we have here the activity, which is the comprehensive summary writing. So they are going to create a summary of the taxes in the Philippines, no? So the mode is individual. So I have here the instruction, and then for uniformity purposes, so I have here the specified details of their output. So ano yung ini-expect ko sa kanila. So this is for uniformity purposes. And then I have also include here template that they can use, no, they will be using. So we have here name. So this template is based on the uniformity purpose that I have given them. So name, then the activity title, introduction, one paragraph, and then the content of their comprehensive summary writing. So that's for their activity. And then how to evaluate them for the evaluation process, I have also included here the criteria in order to grade their output. So we have also here the evidence of passing. So they must gain at least 70% of rating to pass the activity. And then lastly, for the last intended learning outcome is to explain the importance of tax reform. So I have given them assessment or reflection. So this is posted in the Google Classroom. So in my instruction, they are going to log in in their Google Classroom, and then under week 6, there is attached question. Diba? Sa Google Classroom, we can now attach question where they can automatically answer, or they can immediately answer whenever they want. So meron diyang specification that their answers must be not more than 10 sentences, and then not less than 7 sentences. And then I have also posted here the question in order for those asynchronous students can also answer, kasi kung hindi nila ma-access yung Google Classroom, they can still answer this. So that's my curriculum guide, learning guide na nagawa ko po. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sir Jesril, for showcasing your output. That is Sir Jesril from the MSU Marawi main campus. Okay, so we have a question, sir. We have a question from one of our facilitator, from Dr. Roxanne. She said it's a very nice module. May we know if the module meets or horizontally aligned with the intended learning outcome and the assessment? Okay, let me repeat. Ma'am Roxanne said that it is a nice module, and she wants to know if the module meets horizontally aligned and with the intended learning outcome and the assessment. Sir?
Yes, sir. So as my intended learning outcome stated, they are going to write, they're expected to write a comprehensive summary about different types, and then they are going to explain. And then they can write a comprehensive summary once they can read, based on our TLA, or the teaching learning activities. So they are makakasagot lang sila, or makaka-create lang sila ng comprehensive summary if mababasa nila yung readings. At the same time, they can have discussion together with their classmates. And then it is also, the intended learning outcome also can be measured through my assessment and the activities po. I think that's okay to meet the horizontal requirement of alignment, rather. Sir?
Okay, thank you, Sir Jesril, for the answer.
Hello,
Roxanne?
sir. This is Sir Jay, one of the facilitators. Thank you for your answer, Sir Jesril. We really commend the work you have done here. So, I can see that in your intended learning outcome, it's really clear. The word right is measurable and reflects about the competence, and it is an example of a professional verb. And then we also have an artifact, which is a comprehensive summary. That's how you measure their understanding of the content. Maybe this is just my suggestion. If you would like to accept this or not, it's up to you. But for clarity of focus, I think we need to write only one intended learning outcome, because the intended learning outcome is the culminating outcome of the module. So maybe this one, the second one, explain the importance of tax reform for acceleration, maybe part of your objectives, or it could be subsumed already in the intended learning outcome of the module, because it's the culminating outcome. And then, sir, we would like to see again your assessment, sir. All right. Wow, this is awesome. It's good that you have a template also, so that students would know what to write on each part. Not this is what we call the expanded opportunity. You know, students are really guided on how to write their output for the culminating outcome. Very nice, very good example. And the tool also, sir, yes, this it is using criteria. So, does are these things reflected in the syllabus, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right, very good example. Very good example, sir. Congratulations. So there is really
Thank you so much, sir. Noted po yung suggestion po. Thank you so much.
yeah, there is really horizontal alignment. And your activities also are engaging because you require students not just to read on them by their own, but maybe, but also you ask them to do group activity. So thank you, Sir Jasriel. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, everyone.
If there's none, maybe everyone has already understood how to create a learning guide, which was given later this morning, the discussion by Professor Jonel Medina. So we can call this a day, and we thank everyone for the participation and also for attending for today's webinar. Everyone is reminded to please click the evaluation link in our chat box. It is a requirement for you to complete the webinar series for this innovative flexible teaching and learning. So for tomorrow's activity, tomorrow the webinar will start at 8:30 in the morning, and then the discussions will include ICT integration, learning guide for Inflex implementation, and the presentation on producing lectures video using Camtasia. Okay, so we hope to see you again tomorrow and can actively participate in the showcasing also of your outputs. Reminding also everyone to please post your output in the Google Classroom. All of the outputs since day 1 up to day 4 will be recorded and it will be checked in your Google Classroom. So thank you once again for attending our webinar for this morning. We thank you for your active participation, and we'll see you again for tomorrow. And thank you and God bless everyone. Once again, this is Glay Vincent Sumailo, your MC for this morning in behalf of the College of Education Department of Technology Teacher Education. Thank you very much, everyone.